United States UN experts warn LGBT rights being eroded and urges stronger safeguards.
Victor Madrigal-Borloz is the UN independent expert on protection against violence and discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Madrigal-Borloz presented conclusions after 10 days visiting DC, Birmingham, Miami, San Diego, when he met with state officials, members of civil society, and persons who had, experiences to share. He said that LGBT persons, and particularly LGBT persons of color, continue to face significant inequality in relation to health, education, employment, and housing, as well as being disproportionately impacted by violence. We have a UN official who is an expert on these issues looking at the US and saying, I am deeply alarmed by a widespread, profoundly negative riptide created by deliberate actions to roll back the human rights of LGBT people at state level. Noting that, these include discriminatory measures and seeking to rebuild stigma against lesbian and gay persons, limiting comprehensive sexual and gender education, limiting access to gender-affirming treatments, to sports, to single-sex facilities. The evidence shows, he continued, that without exception, these actions rely on prejudiced and stigmatizing views of LGBT persons, in particular transgender children and youth, and seek to leverage their lives as props for political profit. This is a person who had a central role in designing and gaining the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And he's saying the U.S. is fucked up right now. I mean, all of us we're just going to say, duh, we know. But it's nice to have, confirmation from someone who has done the work, who's gone out and is an individual who is willing to just listen and examine and look at the rest of the world and say, God, there are places in the world that are hellholes, but the U.S. is really fucking this up when it comes to LGBTQ plus persons.
Well, and that's the thing that I was sort of hopeful for, but the problem is that we're such a power in those international organizations, but those international organizations that are out there to look out for human rights really should be looking at the U.S. and going, okay, we need to start looking at maybe some sanctions or some kind of stuff, because there needs to be some penalty for this. Instead of just like people getting, more and more power from it.
And the thing is that because of the right's push to be isolationist, there is a huge number of people who are calling for us to be removed from the UN, to have the UN removed from U.S. soil. In fact, we read about this in the GOP platform from Texas. It was explicitly laid out that they wanted to withdraw from the United Nations, and they wanted to get the United Nations off of American properties.
Insane. Wow, what a shift in world politics. That is scary stuff.